Hello and welcome back to Retfurb. So on today's video I've got this GT STS which has got a super deluxe shock which needs to be serviced, so I'm going to show the basic process involved in doing that, so let's get to it. So getting straight into it, this is a RockShox super deluxe shock from 97-98 sort of era. You can see it's a little bit rough on the spring, but I'm going to paint that at a later date. But this is just the procedure of doing a basic service on it. So you need to put the spring on the slackest setting, if that makes sense. So winding the collar right at the top, and then that allow it to be compressed. On some of the shocks, the Coupe Deluxe, you don't need to compress it. So ideally you need a spring compressor. Now I'm doing it with a set of mole grips and I've got some rubber on there just to prevent any damage. Now I wasn't too worried on this spring because obviously, like I said, I'm going to paint it at some point. But once you've compressed it, you can just remove that collar out and then it will allow the spring to be slid off. So you have to compress it. You can buy special little spring compressors to do it. Like I say, I've just used the mole grips, but you do need to be really careful because they can just spring off. Now I'm just unthreading these parts on the shock, and this will allow access to the small little screw, which is where you pump up the nitrogen or the air. In this case I'm going to be using air, so we need to remove the small little screw, and that will allow access to put the needle valve in. Now you need a special needle for this. It's a very small needle. You can get them on Amazon. This one was on Amazon. I'll put a link on the description. It wasn't brilliant, to be honest. It wasn't the greatest of qualities. I think 3 of the needles that I had with the kit were not any good. But anyway, you put it in, release the air, make sure you are careful when you do that. If it's under high pressure, it will spray everywhere. Now I have actually taken this shock apart before I did the video. I wanted to go through the procedure first, so I did it and put it all back together again. So I'm just going through again now to show exactly how it's done. So once the air is out, you can then release the piston. So this is unscrewed at this point. Now I'm using an adjustable spanner, but you can use a spanner of the right size, and just getting a tub ready to pour the oil into. And just pouring that in there. So that oil was all new, so I will be using that again. But it's a 5-weight oil that goes in there when it comes to it, which I'll remind of when we do it again anyway. So now you can separate these sections. Now this threaded part unscrews. Now I just got a piece of rubber on my hand and just unscrewed it. It wasn't actually that tight. So we can get access to the inside and just check all the O-rings and everything and get in there and clean it all out. Now you can strip quite a bit down on these shocks to get in there and clean correctly, and then this part just separates. It's just an O-ring which seals that in place, and then the threaded part goes through the middle and holds those together, and just getting in and cleaning all that out. Now there's a piece inside that as well you can get out. I don't know why I didn't show it on the video, but it pulls out and then you can get in there and clean round. So I'm just going in round. Like I say, I have actually already all cleaned this all, but you want to make sure you go in, clean it properly, use some degreaser, make sure there's no sort of bits of sort of dried oil or anything like that. And you shouldn't probably have any of that, but just in case. And obviously check all the O-rings, make sure they're all okay. If they look damaged or they look sort of worn in any way and they're not sealing correctly, they need replacing, otherwise it obviously won't hold the oil and the air pressure. So you see I'm just using some solvent-based degreaser and just going around and cleaning it just to make sure that it's, you know, nice and clean when it goes back together, cleaning all the threads. Now with this part here, you need a special tool to remove the top eye, but first of all I'm just going to remove all the parts off of it. So again, using the adjustable spanner, which you can undo the small nut at the bottom. Be careful once you're doing this because there's quite a lot of small little washers and pieces that come off when you take this off, and you want to make sure they go back in the correct order. So that just undoes, and then you just keep all them together, and then this part can be slid off. Again, checking all the O-rings, making the seals all okay, and then obviously the bump stop needs to come off. So now this part you need the special tool to undo the top eye off of the rod. So this is a tool. Now this goes in a vise. I haven't got a vise at home, weirdly, after doing all this work. I do intend to get one, but what I did is clamp it on, use a set of mole grips to clamp that vise. Again, just being careful, you don't want to over tighten it and cause any damage to the rod. It is very strong, so I'd be surprised if you did. But yeah, just being careful with that, and then just unscrewing the eyelet, just using this set of adjustables again to take that off. And then there's a needle that goes down inside this rod, and then that can just be pushed out, and then we can just check all the seals and everything on that and give it a clean again. So like I say, you know, I'm trying to do this with basic tools as possible, showing the procedure. I know there are special tools, as in, you know, you can use a vise and you'd use proper spring compressors to, you know, do the work, but most of it can be done as I've shown with what I've got, and a lot of people have got similar sort of tools at home. Obviously the clamp that you need to clamp that rod is a specialist tool, and I'll link in the description on Amazon where I got that from. So just cleaning out all these small little pieces inside the eye, and just going around and cleaning all this as well. Again, just making sure you're getting rid of any of the dirt and any dried horrible bits that are in there, and just checking all the seals and everything when it goes back together, and just applying a small amount of grease just to put that back inside. And then a small amount of grease in the adjuster part. And then we can screw that rod back in. So now we're at the point where I'm just going to start putting pieces back together. So it's just a reversal of what we've already done, taking it apart. And again, just clamping this part just to make sure we can tighten that eye back on. Now, I'm sure there'll be people looking at that thinking, oh my God, what are you doing clamping it with a set of mole grips onto that tool? Which, yeah, I get, but there's no damage caused by it. I was very careful doing it, and if you're clamping it in a vise and you're clamping it really tight, surely there's going to be no difference. So yeah, I don't see an issue of it, but I'm sure some people probably will. And then just putting these parts back on the bottom of the rod, just screwing that back in. I'll add a screenshot at the end just showing all the manual and just everything that you need to know with regards to torque settings. So now with the oil, you just need to fill it up so it goes to the bottom of the threads inside of the tube. So it's a 5-weight oil, and once you pour it in, you'll see there's threads inside the tube. So you just do the oil up to the bottom of those threads, and then you can then screw in the piston part back in, and then using the adjustable spanners just to lock that back in place. Now again, at the end I'll do some screenshots just showing the torque settings for all these different parts. And now we just need to unscrew these sections again just to allow access to fill the shock with air. So like I said, this is a special tool that I've got, and then I've got a shock pump which has got a gauge on it which I can put in. So they recommend 225 psi in this, so I'm going to pump it up to 225 psi. So obviously that is quite a high pressure, so just care taken whilst doing this. Ideally get someone to hold the shock while you're doing it. It makes it look worse when you speed it up. It looks like it's flying around all over the place, but yeah, just make sure you're not causing any damage. You don't want that to snap off in there. So now to get the spring back on, so this needs to be compressed like I did before. So like I said, I'm going to use some mole grips and some rubber just to hold that, and then I can slot that lock-in collar back in place. Again, being really careful, obviously you don't want the spring to go flying off. Now I'm not compressing it under really high tension, but it still is compressed. Ideally, like I say, you want to use the proper tool, but this is how I did it and I got on fine. So now we're basically at the end of it, and all I'm just going to do now is just give it a wipe over, and and that's basically it. There's obviously this little adjusting screw for the damper to go back in, but overall, it's all done, and yeah, it came out well, and it's all right. It works all okay. It's back to working as it should. Now, there was no real major issue with it before, but I just wanted to give it a quick service and make sure it was all okay. And I will take it apart at some point again just to redo that spring. So yeah, I hope that helps. If you've got any questions, please send me a message, add a comment. Like I say, in a minute I'll link the manual at the end, and that's it. Thanks for taking the time to watch the video. It's really appreciated. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.